Welcome to a review of the Nike Pegasus Turbo Next Nature. Let's go.
I do it for real, there's no reason to pretend. If I do it once, I do it again. Add it up, bankroll, euro, peso.
Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. So I've got a pretty exciting shoe to review today. It's the Nike Pegasus Turbo Next Nature. For the context, I'm just going to call it the Pegasus Turbo Nature just because it is a little bit of a mouthful. But it's a very exciting shoe. The Pegasus Turbo, very much a love shoe for most of the runners out there. It was a shoe that could pretty much do it all. One of the reasons why speculation was that Nike stopped producing the Pegasus from the Pegasus Turbo 2 was the fact that it just simply did everything from training to tempo to speed work to races, and it kind of stopped people from basically buying the other shoes that were out there. This has now taken another iteration. It's now followed familiar steps of being a nature version, where 50% of the contents of this shoe is recycled by weight, which is a good step in my opinion. A lot of other brands need to probably take that step in terms of having a more sustainable aspect. Again, for this price point, it is £145 for this particular shoe, and it does come in at pretty good value. You do get a lot for your shoe, and we're going to go through the specs, we're going to go through some positives, some negatives, and then a conclusion and summary of the shoe itself. So let's go.
Yeah, I'm watching the rise, and I wouldn't say I'm shocked cause I'm hardly surprised. This one's for the ride, this one's for who knew I'd make it, just needed some time. This one's for my wife, could've left.
So first and foremost, the shoe retails at £145 here in the UK. It is a neutral shoe and it is for road surfaces. I'd say you could probably run on pretty lightly buffed trails if possible, where you can run on a Pegasus and more daily trainers. You can pretty much get away with this as well. It has really good grip on the outsole. The men's weight in my UK 8.5 comes in at a surprising 260 grams. I also had a size 8 for comparison just because I was going through this paranoia stage. I had two sizes. They both weigh exactly the same thing, which actually makes no sense to me whatsoever, how an 8 and an 8.5 can weigh the same thing. Variation between left and right shoe. Again, it could be down to gluing, could be down to the density of the Zoom X, but again, both sizes at UK 8 and 8.5 came in at 260. It kind of is slap bang in the middle of where a high weight shoe is compared to sort of like the Vaporfly. So my Vaporfly weighs 200 grams, my Invincible weighs close to 300. This comes in at 260, so it is right in that middle. And again, my Pegasus 39 come in just over around 270 or so, which is not too bad for a daily, for a speed shoe where you do want to pick up the pace. The heel drop is 10mm, very familiar, nice feeling. Again, this is a shoe very much so if you are familiar with that floor feeling, having your foot touch the ground, having that spring and pop off, you're going to like this shoe pretty much. I grew up and I sort of started running on Nike Frees, the old school Pegasus, flying it races, very thin. So for me personally, this is a familiar feeling in a shoe compared to we've been spoiled recently in terms of having high stack heights, big chunky thick shoes, and again that has kind of made us feel like a little bit spoiled. And obviously they're doing that for a reason, to protect the legs, to save the legs, and obviously from the impact of road running. So this shoe is best as a go-to trainer for comfort, durability, and also speed along the range of different tempos, along different easy pace and transition into sort of steady and up to tempo pace. I personally wouldn't race in this shoe. I think it's just probably a little bit too heavy, a little bit of the construction is a bit too heavy to race in it particularly. So let's move into some positives of the shoe. First and foremost, let's go straight into the upper. I really like the upper. The upper is solid. It has a really solid construction. It just feels well built for a shoe which has been recycled. The materials, it feels very plush. First and foremost, let's start with the back of the heel counter. Again, you got a nice wrap around along the back of the heel. This feels really nice. You do get a really good lockdown. No issues whatsoever once you cinch up the laces. And again, you have a really nice planting of the foot. It feels very snug. It kind of hugs your foot with the fly in it. And I think the construction of the shoe, I'd say it's semi-breathable. I wouldn't say it's as breathable as something like a Flyknit Racer, which has a really nice breathable material. But again, this has a really nice construction. It feels very nice and plush. And again, certain overlays, you've got this sort of blue piping, which actually acts as a flywire type, which is really nice. It doesn't really lock down the laces, as you can see from there. The laces itself, really nice length. Again, that shoelacy feeling. They feel really nice on, nice lockdown, really good flat laces. They don't cause any pressure on the top of the foot and with your toes. I'd say the shoe isn't wide, it also isn't too narrow. It's kind of in that slap bang middle. In terms of the sizing, obviously it's a true to size shoe. Initially I thought I could get away with the 8, but once I put my socks on, my cushion socks that I normally wear, 8.5, your true to size, is the way you want to go for this shoe, just to have a little bit of room, just a bit of wiggle room. And also you do expect the upper to sort of loosen off as time goes by, but initially you want to stick true to size. And again, the toes can wiggle, you do have a little bit of room, there's no pinching on the front of the shoe, and they've also retained the OG heritage of the shoe by having that pinstripe, which went back to the original shoe itself. Looks wise, I think it looks brilliant. I think it's such a nice looking shoe. Most people who don't like the Pegasus Turbo will probably buy this shoe as a casual, as a hype beast type of shoe, but personally, as a running shoe, a nice silhouette, it looks really, really nice, really fun, really nice colorways, and it's just not a dull shoe. I personally cannot run in a dull shoe because it kind of represents you as a person, what you like to put your foot in, and obviously taste is really, really imperative. You've obviously got on the tongue, you've got the marking, you've got a pull tab here, which is really nice. The Flyknit material is a really nice construction. Moving on to the midsole, and you have a chunk of ZoomX where you can see the split line is where that's SR02, that's ZoomX, and the SR02 just carries along a thin strip at the bottom until you get to the front. And again, the outsole is actually SR02. The original Pegasus Turbo had React and ZoomX blend, whereas this has the recycled ZoomX. So the recycled content of this is basically all the offcuts that you get in production. For example, if you're making a particular shoe, you're going to have scraps that fall onto the floor that are not used. So they just basically use that to make this shoe, not the ones that you return back from all the ones you try, because you would lose springiness, the density of the actual ZoomX itself. So that's not the case. These are just offcuts of ZoomX, which are just kind of just glued together. My only issue with it is being the SR02 is added for durability. It is pretty soft and squishy. You can get your fingers in, similar to the Zoom Fly 5. And again, this feels very, very squishy, although the ZoomX feels a lot more squishier compared to the SR02. Outsole, you have a really, really nice coverage of grip. You've got a nice waffle design. Again, it feels pretty nice on. You have initial sort of that slappiness that you do get when you run from the first time, and I'll insert what the slap cam looks like. And again, from the sound, you actually saw that it doesn't sound too bad. It just sounds like a normal shoe. Really good grip. I really found that when you pick up the pace, the grip is really nice. I found it really, really nice, and that's a huge positive for me in terms of how the foot transitions onto the ground, how you go through the motion and that cycle, and it felt pretty nice. You're going to get a lot of wear and tear out of this shoe. Again, because of that SR2 and that durability, it's going to give you a lot of miles out of the shoe. In terms of negatives, I'd say from what people remember the Pegasus Turbo, from what it was and what I remember it, this is only a very small transition into that series. For more than anything, it seemed just like a faster Pegasus, which, I mean, it is the name of the shoe. It's a Pegasus plus, maybe not a Pegasus Turbo. Personally, I think the weight of the shoe is probably a little bit too heavy for those tempos. I would probably stick more so with a Streak Fly for a tempo, or if I'm doing a harder, longer session for a marathon, most likely I'll probably end up wearing an old pair of Vaporflies. I can probably take this from recovery pace, easy pace, and up to that tempo sort of speed. But nonetheless, when you put your foot down in the shoe, it feels great. I did some strides at the end of an easy run, and I think they felt really nice. I felt like my foot was connected to the ground. I could push off and toe off with my big toe. And I actually like the feeling of the shoe, rather than when you've got like something like an Invincible, which is very, very squishy. You can't really feel the ground as much. Whereas with this, you can, and I think that was a real plus point for me. And it kind of turns it as a negative in terms of a thinner stacked shoe into a positive in terms of you really do feel that ground contact. And if that's what you're looking for, then you're really going to get on with the shoe. Another negative potentially is that it can run a little bit hot. I think with the material and the construction of this Flyknit upper, it's very plush, which means that it's probably not the most breathable shoe in really, really warm conditions, which isn't too bad. But other than that, I'd say that you can get away with thin socks. I wear thick socks anyway, so I kind of like the feeling in the shoe. So if I wanted to have a little bit more breathability, I can actually then transition into a thinner sock. Those are probably the only negatives that I have. It's a really good price point for 120 to 140 pounds, which you can get with a voucher. It's a really good value for money on the shoe in the shoe market. Moving into a quick summary, I mean, for me personally, first and foremost, it's going to stay in my rotation. I really like the way it fits. I really like the way it looks. I also like the way it runs more than anything. I like the way it feels on my foot. You get a nice splaying of the feet, feel quite connected to the ground. Can you feel the springiness and sort of the propulsion of the ZoomX? A tiny bit, maybe not so much because there's not as much there, but It does feel fairly soft underfoot. I can't say it feels super heavy or like a brick. It's not a brick in that sense, not like the Zoom Fly. So if you're choosing between the Pegasus Turbo Nature and the Zoom Fly, Pegasus Turbo 100%. A good comparison and another further video would be this against the Streak Fly, which would be really good to see. But initially it gets a thumbs up from me. I really liked the way it felt pretty much, and it's going to stay in my rotation going further. So I want to thank you guys for watching. Remember to give this video a thumbs up and to consider subscribing below, and I'll see you in the next video.
Yeah, I'm watching the rock.